Well, hey Gareth, this is Anthony. Yeah, I've got some interview questions here. Basically, just been reaching out to a bunch of different composers and putting together this kind of large piece. We're gonna put some of them in this larger piece, run some online for like more dedicated pieces. So it's been really nice talking to just a bunch of these amazing composers. So I'm really glad you could be a part of this as well.
Oh, yeah, thanks for having me.
I was listening to some of that Ori soundtrack earlier, so I really enjoyed just kind of that ambient sound.
hmm
Ambient? Ambient.
You're primed and ready then.
Yeah, pretty much. Well, just getting started here. How did you first get started in video game composing?
Let's see. I need to see how far I can go back. So I was, in 2009, I was a student at the University of Southern California, and they have a film, TV, and video game music program. It's a year long. And while I was there, I worked on several student games, and I also worked on some indie projects. I started working on them while I was a student, and then over the course of the next 2 years, some of them started getting released, and I was able to kind of build up my gaming resume with a lot of these indie and student titles that came out.
Right. Excellent. And what's kind of your general process when you're composing a new soundtrack?
It really depends on the kind of game it is. For example, the approach for a single-player, narratively driven game like Ori and the Blind Forest is very, very different to doing a multiplayer fighting game that is like one-on-one combat, which is what I did for a virtual reality game called The Unspoken. So one of the first things I try to do, though, because it can really help inform everything else, is try to find the game's identity. And the game's identity can be many things. It can be, the most obvious answer is to find the game's main theme or melody or motif. But in some cases, a big sweeping melody isn't the most appropriate thing. So then you're kind of looking for like a sonic identity, like what makes the game stand out in terms of its aesthetic musically. And that might be like a really cool sound or a really cool instrument or a really cool combination of instruments. The idea is to basically to brand the game with music or with sound in a way that people, when they hear it, after 5 seconds, they know, oh, that's Ori and the Blind Forest, or that's Ark Survival Evolved, or that's The Unspoken. That's kind of the first thing I'm trying to do, and then because everything else can build from that.
Definitely. And is there anything in particular that you generally look towards for inspiration when you're working on these soundtracks?
In terms of music, I've always preferred not to listen to other soundtracks when seeking inspiration, because also other soundtracks were informed by basically when we're writing a soundtrack, we're often having to deal with temp music, and the temp music is from another soundtrack, and I think it's better to seek out music that has never been applied to film or game or games, and try and take something from that as inspiration, put it into your own music, because there is a lot of music in the world that is getting produced that never goes into to film or games, and it's being produced often for the love of creating music rather than because a composer had to put it to a piece of film or a television show or a video game. I mean, one of the things I like doing is I just like listening to music from different parts of the world. I'm very fortunate also to have lived in many different parts of the world. So I just have a lot a lot more broader of a base of music to draw upon when I'm trying to come up with ideas. I think if you spend a lot of time in the same country, you're going to be surrounded by that country's culture a lot, and that's fine. But if you want to get a broader perspective in your music, it's better to just go visit somewhere, go visit another country, or just or if you can't even do that, experience people from other countries, just like get chatting to other people and learning about their cultures and things, because that can really help inform the inspiration for your own music.
Absolutely. And this has been kind of a question that I've been asking everybody that I just find personally really interesting. Are you a pretty avid gamer yourself?
Yes, I would say I'm more in tune with games than I am with film and television, just because I feel like I've been gaming for longer and I've put more hours into playing games than I have put hours into watching films or watching TV shows. Even in the age of Netflix binge watching, I still probably play more video games. And frankly, I think it's an essential part of the job. I think if you're a game composer, you've definitely got an advantage if you are playing the games that you work on, and if you've been playing games your whole life, because it's going to be easier for you to get into the shoes of your audience and understand what they might be looking for. That's not to say you can't do a game score without playing a game, because you definitely can, but that will often require some help on the audio side, like having a good audio team that can like implement your music in a way that gamers will appreciate. Basically, on the audio team, whether it's the composer or the sound designer or the audio director, someone definitely has to be playing the game to get your music to be played back in the best way possible. But I'm of the opinion that it really helps, with the composition process if you're an avid gamer. So yes is sorry. The short answer to your question is yes.
Right on. Well, and kind of along those lines. Oh, well, I guess what is kind of your favorite kinds of games, I suppose, as well?
I'm always drawn to the story-driven games.
Right.
So, and in terms of genre, like there's not really a genre like it. It's just like if there's a good story, I'm gonna love it. So one I always keep coming back to is Dead Space, especially just because the opening 4 to 5 hours of Dead Space I think is perfectly paced and perfectly written. It's very hard to pace horror video games well. And I mean, my favorite game of all time is the original Deus Ex, and I like the entire series of Deus Ex, Invisible War, Human Revolution, Mankind Divided. But the original Deus Ex, it's amazing they managed to fit all of that game, which takes about 20 to 30 hours to finish. They managed to fit it all onto one CD and have custom music and have voice acting and have the massive scope that game has. I feel like I'm very lucky because we don't have to really optimize as much anymore. We can just kind of put whatever we want in, and we can use a full orchestra, and the audio is not really compressed. Whereas back in those days, they really had to be super efficient with what they were putting out, because there's only so much data a CD can hold. So yeah, I mean, story-driven games are what I'm drawn to. And in terms of playing with friends, I play a lot of sports games. Even though I'm British, I'm very into American football, and I have a pretty deep understanding of the game, so I'm quite good at Madden. Nice. And having lived in Japan for 3 years, I kind of got an amazing 3-year education in how to play fighting games. So I'm particularly strong at Tekken.
Oh, very nice. It's weird because, I was talking to David Wise, speaking of kind of larger adventure games and whatnot, I was speaking with David Wise, who, did Donkey Kong Country and all that last week. And we were talking about those kind of bigger games. And I feel like as I've gotten older, that's just kind of intimidating nowadays. Now I'm just kind of tired and, you have less time for things. So the idea of an entire new world to explore is kind of exhausting.
Yeah, I think also, I mean, we're in an age at the moment where gamers aren't finishing their games, which I think is actually a shame, right? Because a lot of work usually goes into the endings of these games. And I mean, one thing I do think you're going to see more of, I think you're going to see a lot more of the really polished but bite-sized independent game. I mean, I'm going to name my own game, obviously, as one of them. Ori and the Blind Forest, you could finish in a weekend easily. Like, if you're a competent gamer, you could finish it in a weekend. I mean, recently, Cuphead just came out. Now, Cuphead is a difficult game, and maybe you can't finish it in a weekend because it's difficult, but it is still a fairly short game, but it's an incredibly polished experience. Then there's the usual suspects like Journey or Everybody's Gone to the Rapture. There's a lot of these very high quality titles that can be finished in a short period of time, because I think there is a recognition by the industry that, one, people still like the single player experiences, and two, people don't have 100 hours to invest into the latest Zelda or Assassin's Creed,
right,
or the next Elder Scrolls game, or the next open world game, period, because they do take an incredible amount of time. I still don't know how I managed to finish all of The Witcher 3 and all of its expansions and managed to still have a job.
Right.
But like that was my one open world game last year that I could actually like finish, because they all just take too much time. But I think there is a market for both of them. So I think you'll still continue to see these massive worlds because people enjoy getting lost in them. But I think you'll see even more of these really polished, shorter, high-quality titles, which often come in at a lower price point as well. So it usually means more people can play them.
Absolutely. Kind of going in a different direction. Is there a game series that you've never composed for before that you would like to do the music for?
Yep, I've thought about this many times, so it's a pretty easy one. I mean, obviously, I've already mentioned Deus Ex, but the thing is, like all of these games that I want to write for, they've had such amazing work on them done on them already. So it's like it's one of those things like you'd be stepping into a legacy of really good music as well as like, and then there's a pressure to deliver. But the Deus Ex series, I'd love to work on. I am a massive fan of Mass Effect. I loved the first 3 games, and I loved Andromeda too. So I'd love to like. Basically, the Mass Effect games are really exciting because there are so many different worlds and there's so many different musical opportunities to work in. And for that reason, I'd also say the Assassin's Creed series, because again, you get to basically visit a period of history and kind of do your own spin on things. Like the latest one is going to be set in Egypt, but we've already done the Middle East and Italy and London, and I'm sure they've got a ton more other places that they could go to, and it would be really cool to step into that world as well. But honestly, in the video game world, it's whatever game you're working on, you're kind of going to be doing something fantastical anyway. So, and that's one of the cool things about working in video games is that like constantly all of these new, crazy, exciting worlds are being created, which makes it a really fertile, creative ground for a composer to be working in.
Absolutely. And then kind of just finishing up here, what advice would you give to somebody that's kind of looking to get into the world of game composing?
This is a pretty standard answer, but the main thing is like you have to work really, really, really hard.
Right.
But I think I can expand on that a little bit by like saying it's working hard doesn't mean just like writing a ton of music. That's part of the course. But I think the actual key is to finish what you start. When you're a young composer, every composer has this. They have like a massive folder on their hard drive with unfinished idea 1, 2, 3, 782, 941. There's like every composer has a bunch of projects which are probably really good ideas, but the composer never committed to finishing them. Because I think most composers have no problem coming up with the initial idea. Where the hard part is developing that idea and turning it into a fully formed piece of music. And that's especially hard when you're starting out. But the more you do that, the more you develop and finish a track, the easier it becomes to do it the next time. And also, you can then evaluate what is good and what is bad about that piece of music and learn from it and apply it into your next one. But it's not something that young composers are pretty good at because they haven't been hired that much yet, so they've not got the discipline of having been able to finish things on time and on budget, etc. So that's what I would say. It's not just about doing the work, it's about finishing the work, because when you finish something, you can then show it and display it and get feedback on it, and maybe someone will listen to it and then hire you. But you can't really show something you haven't finished.
Definitely. I think that's really good advice. And really, I think that applies to a lot of kind of creative fields as well.
Yes, it does. I mean, I live in Los Angeles, and there's a lot of the saying is I'm working on this project and that project and this project, and my response to that is like, what can you show me that like you've actually finished and that I can like experience? Because that's much more exciting to talk about rather than like something that is going to come out. It's more like what have you done and what can be presented to me right now. That's always like a million times more interesting to anyone, I think.
Totally. So you'll have somebody working on a screenplay, but also a rock opera and a series of paintings at the same time,
exactly.
But they don't have one
like,
thing.
Where are they?
Right.
So, yeah, because I would be interested in all of those things potentially if I could actually like see them.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, it's Los Angeles and especially in Hollywood, it's just like everyone's working on 9 different projects, but probably only one will actually get to the finish line.
Right.
Yeah, so that's why I give that advice, because it is very attractive to just about everyone. Like even if it's not like your absolute best work, because it's impossible to deliver your absolute best work every time. You just do the best you can. But finishing stuff helps you get better every single time without fail, because you will learn from it.
Definitely. Well, hey, Gareth, it's been so nice talking with you today. Thank you very much for being a part of this and kind of giving your insight on the world of game composing. I'm really excited about this kind of series that we're doing between the like dedicated interviews and whatnot. So thank you very much.
I'm guessing you've probably got fairly different answers for each composer, because we're all quite a weird bunch.
It's been interesting, like the question of kind of that question of do you even play games? Some people are avid gamers. Some people like watch their family play but don't really play themselves. Some people play nothing at all. It's a really interesting spectrum that way.
The early access scoring, it was my first early access title. It's been around. The concept of early access has been around for about 3 to 4 years, but one of the knocks on early access titles was that only 3 out of 4 of them actually make it to the finish line.
Right.
Now, in the case of Ark, it was probably until PlayerUnknown Battlegrounds came out, it was definitely the biggest early access title. Now, PlayerUnknown Battlegrounds is on its own planet, but that's another story entirely. Right. So one of the main thing that like was a challenge for me was having my early music in the game be something that the audience fell in love with. So when composers are writing music for a game, normally we're doing stuff all in the computer, and if we're using the orchestra, what we put in first is a digital virtual mock-up of what the piece will sound like. Now, in the case of Ark, the very first piece of music that I wrote ended up being the main theme for the game. And over the course of development, we made some changes to it. And this was when I learned that the audience had fallen in love with a track that I never regarded as a final version. June 2015, Ark comes out, and we put in the main theme, and it's in its virtual format. And then I make a tweak about a year and 2 months later, and still within the virtual realm. And I go online to the forums, and the comments are like, "They've ruined the music. What have they done to the music? I preferred the older version." And this happened again and again and again. And I'm like, did I really ruin the music? I don't think so. I didn't really change that much. But because it's the first thing you hear when you fire up the game, and you hear it constantly while you're in the lobby and on the main menu screen, and you do spend quite a lot of time on there, people have become so used to it and so attached to it that like you're kind of changing their experience when they fired up the game. And I had not planned for that. And it was also the case with the initial combat music. Initially, when in June 2015, when we made the first version of the game, there were only two pieces of combat music, one for the daytime and one for the nighttime. Now, it was always the plan to expand it, but the problem is we didn't really put in the expanded combat music until about a year and a half later. And so, again, people had gotten used to just these two pieces of combat music. Now, I don't need to tell you that like having just two pieces of combat music for a game that takes like thousands of hours of your time is probably not going to get it done. But again, when we put the expanded music in, which had like customized music for the day and night, but also for each section of the island, so like customized music for the mountains, customized music for the jungle, for the beach, for the grasslands, when we put it in, it was like, they've really changed the music, and I'm not sure if I like it. And then, like 2 weeks later, people get used to it. But it was just really something that I hadn't expected with such a large audience and people playing the game all the time, that people would get used to music, even when it was clearly like a digital mock-up and it was going to be replaced in the final version. The fact is, with early access games, like people are playing the game all the time, and especially with a game like Ark, where people really put in crazy hours, right. It's just something that you, as a composer, I had never considered planning for. In the film world, the convention is like a director might become particularly attached to a piece of temporary music before it gets replaced by the composer. But in this case, it was the audience getting attached to a piece of music by the composer. And so in a way, I felt like almost scared to replace my own music. Eventually, we got to the final release and everything worked out. But I think in future, I would probably just do a better job of communicating to the community exactly what the plan is with the music, and also start from a broader base. I'm not just starting with like two combat cues. Even if they're super rough, just have like a broader base so that the combat music can be expanded upon, so it's less shocking for the community when major changes are made to the music experience of the game. Sorry, that was a really long-winded answer. But I think I got it all in there. It is quite complicated, but like it is also clearly a method that works. Ark's now shipped, so it's worked in that case. PlayerUnknown Battlegrounds is obviously going to ship at some point, and I don't even know if that game has much music, but like it would face a similar problem if there was music.
Yeah. And of course, you have to revisit that challenge all over again when you recorded the music live at Abbey Road.
Right, exactly. So I mean, even when the final version of the game has music recorded with a 93-piece orchestra at Abbey Road. I mean, it's really with the best of the best. And even then, when we put the music in, it was like, oh, what have they done to the music? They've changed it again. And I'm like, yes, it sounds better, doesn't it? But there's like an adjustment period. Even when you've got like the highest quality musicians there, and you've got the best quality recording, there is an adjustment period in early access for your community to get used to the new material. And it's just something I can't think of a better way around it other than to like be more open with the community about the development of the music and to prepare them for the expectation that things will change. But yeah, I mean, as Greg said, it was like even with the Abbey Road recording, there was still, I wouldn't say pushback. It's just that adjustment period because people became attached to the music that they were used to.
Well, if there's something that the gaming community is definitely not great with, it's change. So I can definitely see
right.
why, you know.
Yeah, I mean, I can't imagine like working on a game like Overwatch or League of Legends,
Oh,
where
my
it's
God.
like you introduce a new character, which obviously changes the balance of the game,
Right.
And of course you're inevitably going to get pushback because introducing a new character usually means an older character has been nerfed.
Oh.
So it's but then the adjustment period is over, and it's like you have to ride a storm each time and hope that you come out the other side.
Oh, definitely. It's kind of that the same with when Smash Brothers came out a couple years ago, and people saying,
Yep.
"Well, why'd you put this character in? Because you could have put this character in." And people really they're vocal about their change.
It's a double-edged sword because it is good to like have that kind of passion, but equally, I mean, the moral of my tale is like it was good to get the community's feedback, but ultimately, what is in the final game is true to my own creative vision. And Studio Wildcard, who made Arcs, like the community can like give you like minor tweaks to your course direction, but overall, like we're still captaining the ship, if that makes sense.
Right. Absolutely. Well,
Anthony, just to give you the scale and scope of Arc, you know, they were at 9 million players.
oh my gosh.
Point. So it's a huge title. It was obviously, like Gareth mentioned earlier, it was the most successful early access game to date until very recently.
Yeah.
But I'll resend you the description for the game if you're not familiar with Arc, because I think it's an interesting concept in itself. It's basically an open world survival adventure game with dinosaurs.
Oh.
You're on an island, so it's a really interesting concept. I'll resend you the description for the game so you've got that to hand. So you obviously you understand what the concept is initially.
Well, those all sounds like the things I enjoy, kind of put together. The dinosaurs is just kind of the icing on top.
It's dinosaurs, survival, and there's a building like Minecraft element, a base building element to it as well. And with it being online, there is a community aspect to it as well. So I still don't quite know how they managed to combine all these things into a coherent experience, but they did.
Right.
Because otherwise, and they did it successfully, because otherwise it wouldn't have shifted like 10 million units. So
Right.
yeah, it's definitely a very unique game to work on. It's a tough game to describe, which is why I'm grateful Greg is going to send you a little package describing it, because there's a lot going on in the game. But I mean, also the trailers probably do a better job of like getting you into the feel of what the game is, because you'll immediately get it once you see it in action.